Director is really, it's kind of like you represent the audience in making a film, and whatever segment your film is aimed at, you need to make sure that it entertains that segment, and that's your job. That's kind of where your job ends. Everything you do on top of that, which obviously we always try to do as much as we can to make it look aesthetically pleasing and so forth, is a bonus. And it's a very, very difficult to get a film with a very low budget like Bakhat looking aesthetically pleasing, like I think we've managed. And that, I think, is a huge accomplishment. And I think people don't understand the amount of effort and the amount of skill the HODs have that contributed to a product like that. Bakhat actually dealt with the idea of fortune versus, or fame in Bakhat's case, versus love in a way. And I think I don't know if it got the message across, but some people walked up to me and said the film meant quite a lot for them because they were struggling with those elements as well. So on a subtextual level, I think Bakhat worked. Fani Fries Lebola certainly worked, because I got a whole lot of emails of people that said it changed a little bit of them, of their ideologies and stuff, and it also helped them to consider even having a relationship with kind of even like cross-continental, not even cross-racial relationship. I work with a very kind of loyal, with a very lovely team of HODs that have done 2 films now. And I really respect their craft, and I understand their craft, and I understand what they bring to the project. So I kind of let them do their thing. I obviously guide them and tell them this is the kind of ideas I have. For instance, I would never argue with a DOP about lighting, because he understands it better. Just as long as, well, he makes the day. Obviously that's important on my budget still. And then another thing that's important is it has to add to the story and enhance the story. I think that's key. So I'm very fortunate to work with a lovely bunch of people. I think my passion began with my grandfather, which he always loved to tell me stories, and I started writing them down, and I kind of, I think it's probably a copyright infringement, but I wrote his stories down and then I gave them to him, and he really liked them, and which is probably quite narcissistic, I think. But so it began with my grandfather and his storytelling, and then I started writing my own and also giving it to my grandfather, and I think that's where my passion for storytelling developed from. Younger days, I was quite an avid tennis player. I played a lot of tennis. I was quite academic as well. I figured that my hair is going to fall out and I'm going to have a huge forehead, so I had to study hard to eventually get a girlfriend. So I think that's why I was quite a studier. I studied hard, and then I also had a huge love for cinema. I always had a love for cinema. It's just one of those things, my best times I could remember when I was young was going to the movies and the whole experience of it. The first film that made a huge impact to me was Dead Poets Society, I think, especially because it had those elements of you can express yourself, and you can go against authority, and you can make your voice count. I wanted to be a storyteller on long format, and I wanted as many people as possible to watch my stories. It gave me a kick to entertain audiences, and I think that's why I got drawn to film. But I'm quite open for television. I'm very curious what the online medium is doing at the moment. But I'm very intrigued with the idea of pleasing an audience. I'm quite a crowd pleaser, I would say. And I think that drew me out of theatre into cinema. As a director that's very focused on commercial success, I still think that you need integrity in every story, and the story really needs to be entertaining and move you in some way. So I've got quite a strong emotional connection with all the content I create. And also different markets, it's strange, if you look at a market thematically, you start discovering that people of a certain age group are drawn to certain themes. And I've always found that my stories are very thematically rich, and they therefore appeal to a certain bracket of market. And I'm quite conscious about that in creating the films. Inspiration to, I think, to create commercially successful product basically comes from just the idea of making a living out of film. I think it's a very difficult medium to make a living out of. And then also, one of my big passions is understanding business and understanding people, understanding what appeals to people, and understanding kind of I would say, the universal truths of our time. And then at the same time, creating something that speaks uniquely to them. Every step in creating Buckhut, I understood a little bit more about the industry, and it was magical, you know, to sit there and watch your film on the big screen, and like check on your phone and all the sold-out theaters. It was an incredible experience, but at the same time, it was an experience that I became much more mature. I think in 1 or 2 years, I fast forward my life to about 10 years. You know, I felt a little older afterwards, and all the naivety, or most of the naivety, was gone. The more I know about writing, the more difficult it becomes. It's one of those crafts that you just get more finicky. And so I would say my Buckhut was quite a broad stroke film. I thought it was fine strokes at that time, obviously, but looking at it back now, it's quite a broad stroke film, which I think the colouring of my characters and just the substance of the way I deal with themes are much more mature and much more thought-provoking than Buckhut. But like in the case of Fani Furi's Lobola and even Leading Lady. But it's still, you gotta understand that specific audience you're making the film for. And Buckhut was a teen comedy, so it allowed me to get away with a little bit more of a immature style of filmmaking. But I definitely developed as a film writer. But you know, I think it's Gavin Hood that told me that overnight success takes 10 years to make, and I'm kind of start feeling that now. You know, I started at a very early age, and I'm almost now at the point where I can say, in 2 years from now, I'd consider myself, I think, a filmmaker. Business side of it is as creative for me as the actual film production side, and I really enjoy it. I've always enjoyed business. I'm lucky that I've always enjoyed mathematics as well, and even accounting to some extent. I was never scared of business. It was always a necessary, I wouldn't even say it was evil, it was just a necessary way of communicating with a bigger part of or segment of the market. People like Dion Opperman, Anton Basson, Justin Strydom, and I got something different from all of them. It's a great school. I think AFTA has got a huge potential, and it really helped me to understand the microcosm of the South African industry a lot better. But it was really about the mentors that I think that's why it was valuable learning curve for me. You can be moral about filmmaking, and then you can argue that one of my favorite films is Wolf of Wall Street is an immoral film. And you can argue that shouldn't have been made out of a moral sense, but I don't agree with that. I think Wolf of Wall Street is an incredible film, and it's made about the debaucherous society in New York, and I find it extremely entertaining, and I really loved watching it. Now, I haven't made a film like that yet. Most of my films are quite they're uplifting films, and they're anti-polarization films, but I would in a heartbeat make something like Wolf of Wall Street. So I think the moral dilemma is to be honest to the story and to be true to the character. I think that's where your moral obligation as a storyteller begins and ends. I'm not allowed to moan about my life before I gymmed. I went to the gym. I actually went out with friends, and I worked really hard the day. And if I did all those three things, I'm allowed to moan about my day. And that helped me a lot, especially when I'm writing and I'm sitting alone in my room, is to remind myself to go out and to do it a little bit of, and also to eat healthy and to live quite a healthy lifestyle. I think I live a pretty healthy lifestyle at the moment. I guess advice would be honesty, I think, to yourself first and foremost, as to where you are and where you want to be. And also not to burn your bridges. There's some people that you need to burn your bridges with because they they might be detrimental to your career, but most people don't burn your bridges with, and always be on the outlook to form new connections. I think networking is a huge part of the film industry, and I think I'm quite positive about networking and building up a great network, and also building on relationships I already have. I've got different stages of fulfillment in the process. It's also brainstorming the product. I love the journey and brainstorming it, and thinking of where this film who this film will touch or move or just entertain. And then another favorite, it's great to end the writing process and start with the actual directing process. And the pre-prod is always, I love pre-prod, and thinking about it, the script and how you're going to change it into a film with skilled HODs. And then, of course, when the audience watches that film for the first time, it's both scary and incredible at the same time. It takes a lot of work to make a product special. And if the product is not special, you only have one chance to kind of show it to an agent or manager, or in South Africa's case, probably a producer. So I would say put a lot of effort into making that idea as well crafted as you can.